Well, now that Britain is officially leaving the anti-democratic European Union, many of us who voted for that happy day are hoping that the people who are still spitting feathers 9 months later, telling us how ignorant and stupid we are for not selling out our birthright, will finally show a little dignity and accept the referendum result. This applies especially to all you public progressives, angry intellectuals, failed politicians, media hacks and tin pot celebrities who are still bristling at being overruled by those you clearly regard as your inferiors. Indeed, the one thing that comes through all the lamenting and teeth gnashing is a quite visceral contempt for the knowledge and intelligence of the general public, the ordinary voter who doesn't happen to have a PhD in economics, people like me. We voted for the things that are important to us and not for the things that are important to you. So naturally, you assume that we walked on our knuckles to the polling station and voted with a heavy, blunt instrument. You impugn our motives with your own nasty assumptions. You blithely dismiss us as racist little Englanders and sneer at our opinions as if we have no right to hold them. To you, we're not only wrong politically, but morally too. Either too stupid to understand the issues, or too busy eating out of a bucket in front of the TV to pay attention, or just plain racist. It's the same condescending backlash we've seen against Trump voters in the United States, and it's the same condescending people who are behind it, people like you. Your bitter and abusive response to Brexit makes the fact that you lost almost as pleasing as the fact that we won, especially given your selective support for democracy. When you win a vote, oh, it's the will of the people. But when you lose, suddenly it's the tyranny of the majority and the rules weren't fair and they need to be changed retrospectively or you'll throw a tantrum. This is the new progressive politics now, where the consensus is that we who voted for Brexit are too ignorant to know what we voted for and too irresponsible to be allowed to vote on such an important matter as who governs us. Instead, we should pretend that it's about complex economics, which it isn't, and leave it to the unelected, unaccountable experts and professionals. In other words, a benevolent dictatorship. What could possibly go wrong? You know, the important things in politics, like the important things in life, are not complex at all. It's their very simplicity that makes them profound. And Brexit was always about such fundamentals, not trade. It was about who governs Britain and who makes our laws. Economics and trade are secondary issues that should have had no bearing on anyone's decision. Economic conditions are transient and unpredictable, as the experts have proven to their repeated embarrassment. Trade is negotiable, travel is negotiable, but we decided in the referendum that our sovereignty is not even for this generation's selfish convenience. Now, some people say we should have had a 2/3 majority for such an important constitutional change. And they might have a point if that had been the requirement for the referendum that took us into the European Union under false pretenses, but it wasn't. Back then we were swindled out of our sovereignty and constitutionally mugged when we voted in good faith for what we were told was a trading bloc. And then we got saddled with a full-scale political union that we didn't want and never would have voted for. And it turned out that other people in Europe didn't want it either. And they kept trying to tell them in one referendum after another. France, the Netherlands, Denmark, Ireland. Over and over, people told them, we don't want this, and they just kept refusing to listen. So when we in Britain finally got a chance to get out of their clutches, we took it, because this time, unlike in 1975, we knew very well what we were voting for and what we were voting against. 17 million people don't vote against the status quo in the face of overwhelming establishment propaganda and scaremongering without good reason. A simple majority was a damning verdict against the European Union and against the creeping threat it clearly posed to our freedom behind that smokescreen of economics and trade. Now, this illegitimate political monster, this vehicle for the unelectable, is deservedly crumbling and dying under the weight of its own incompetence and arrogance. The tipping point has been passed now. It's lost too much public support and credibility to survive. 10 or 20 years from now, it won't exist. Already the Americans won't take it seriously and have said that from now on they'll only make trade deals with European nations individually, because they know what we all know, that the experts, the professionals, have had their chance in Europe and they couldn't have done a worse job if they'd been trying to screw things up. Look at the unholy mess that all those PhDs in economics have made of the single currency. They clearly don't know what they're doing, or even worse, they do. Either way, their disastrous vanity project has impoverished an entire generation and punished the people of Southern Europe essentially for not being German enough. Somebody should have told them that everyone in Europe would need to be a lot more German if this thing was ever going to work. Their irresponsible migrant policy seems calculated to flood a borderless Europe with criminals, terrorists and rapists. They flout their own rules to expose us to the most violent dregs of humanity who have no right to be here, none of whom we can deport, and whose presence is going to make things permanently more dangerous for all women and girls. Politically, they throw their weight around and behave like dictators. They remove elected governments that won't do their bidding. They even picked a fight with Putin by coveting Ukraine and encouraging the overthrow of an elected government, which is something, let's remember, that they are not. Everything they've touched has been a disaster. It's as if Europe is being run by our enemies, and their response to every disaster they cause is to try and grab more power for themselves, to neutralise democracy even more, and to make government even more remote and unaccountable to the people. And 17 million of us outside the progressive bubble of EU bribes and vested interests, subsidies, grants, stipends and fat pensions have had enough of it and of paying through the nose for it. So we voted in good faith to take back our country before it's too late, to restore our status as an independent nation with strong borders in a Europe that's wide open to the entire third world, and to maintain for our grandchildren the freedom to determine their own future, just as we now still have the freedom, despite your best efforts, to determine ours. And we get it that you despise us for it. You don't have to keep making the point. Maybe you think we're too dense to absorb it unless we hear it 1,000 times. And we get it that you don't want to be governed by the opinions of people you don't respect. Why do you think that we, the majority, don't want to be governed by your opinions? Sovereignty matters to us in a way that clearly it doesn't matter to you. But that doesn't make us ignorant, immoral, narrow-minded, xenophobic, racist or thick. And it takes a hell of a lot of arrogance for an intelligent person not to see that. But you keep doing it your way. Keep telling us we got it wrong because we're too stupid and ignorant, maybe a bit racist, to know any better. Keep insulting and patronising us, calling us little Englanders and telling us we're too dumb and irresponsible to have an opinion at all, and maybe we'll change our minds. Yeah, and maybe we'll all celebrate next Christmas on Mars. You never know. Britain is leaving the European Union because we voted for it fair and square. And the rotten, unmandated, unrepresentative European Union is deservedly dying. I don't know what else to tell you. If it's too much to bear, put your fingers in your ears and close your eyes. It will all be over soon.